Willie Inman is a 21-year-old who liked to practice shooting on his down-at-heel family ranch deep in the Arizona countryside. Recently claiming to be back from serving as a soldier in Iraq, he was on edge when police called by.
They start pounding on the door, and with me being so jumpy from the service, they're lucky I didn't come to the door with my gun.
You like guns?
Yes, I do.
What kind do you have?
I've got a Walther P22, I got a M14, I've got 3 shotguns.
Willie's friend, Ricky Flores, 16, missing from home. He'd gone AWOL before, but had promised to mend his ways.
It didn't make sense that he was gone and he wasn't coming home. So that was the first clue that something wasn't right.
A lot didn't add up for local detectives in this remote part of Apache County.
We both had the same feeling that Ricky was hurt or that he was dead.
I knew it wasn't good. He didn't hang out with the best crowd of people.
Nick Flores' brother Ricky hung out with Willie Inman, the guy with a hurt trigger. One day, Inman walked into a police station and started talking. Did detectives have a killer in custody? And was he responsible for the murder of 2 other men?
I didn't suspect any foul play or anything. There was a little bit of blood that was outside of his mouth and some blood pooled up in his left ear. We know that, if you've done something bad, the worst thing in the world is for you to have to carry it the rest of your life.
The rules of engagement were in place. Cop seeking the truth, killer a skilled liar.
If I was to do such atrocity, I could be out there getting rid of it and you would never know.
Detectives gather evidence until a picture of a suspect emerges. Which piece of the puzzle will reveal Willie Inman as guilty of murder? What would be the killer's mistake? Apache County, an area of ranches and small communities, like St. John's. Population 3,200.
It's a small town. There's not a lot of people. Everybody knows everybody. It's a good place to live if you don't like a lot of company. But unfortunately, bad things happen everywhere, and just happened to be to my family here in St. John's, Arizona.
Ricky Flores, Nick's brother, was murdered.
His head was blown off with a 12-gauge shotgun.
Ricky had last been seen alive with this man, Willie Inman. He lived on a ranch just outside St. John's. Willie's girlfriend, Stormy, lived in Springerville, 29 miles away, different police jurisdiction. Something which would loom large in the story of William Inman. Willie walked into Springerville Station on a hot August morning just 5 weeks after his buddy Ricky was first reported missing. When he got there, he insisted on seeing the chief of police himself, Steve West.
I sat down with Mr. Inman and we started talking, just general talk.
Chief West knew nothing about the missing Ricky Flores. Why would he? Flores was a St. John's matter. This was Springerville.
Like a lot of communities, we still have crime, we just don't have as much of it. Children still walk, to the stores. They still go to the movie theater by themselves.
Chief West was as in the dark as anyone about Ricky Flores as he sat opposite Willie Inman. During a 9-hour interview session which followed, there would be many revelations. As well as a love for guns, Willie Inman shared views with Nazis. He showed his fascination by donning Nazi insignias on his baseball cap.
Wow.
My grandpa was the greatest Luftwaffe pilot any pilot ever existed. only one to receive over 1,200 kills.
Willie had a deep sense of what he believed was wrong, was right, was bad or good, and he wanted to rid the world of what he saw as undesirables.
I try to be as law-abiding as possible.
The first time that I knew about the case was when we got a press release about the disappearance of Ricky Flores.
Karen Warnick is the local reporter who covered the story of Ricky's disappearance.
We've had other missing people in the area occasionally, and at the time it didn't really strike a chord. It was just another juvenile disappearance.
My brother went missing in August of 2009. No one really knew what was happening or what was going on. No one in my family knew.
What was confusing to the Flores family about Ricky's disappearance was that he had turned over a new leaf. He'd been something of a wild child until recently.
My brother just got out of juvenile, and instead of staying in there longer, he decided to take 1 year probation for some minor drug charges and stuff. And he was working on himself and his life. He was starting to realize that he couldn't just keep f***ing off. And he was really trying to work on himself, and he was a good person.
St. John's detective Lucas Rodriguez knew all about Ricky and liked him, despite his adolescent ways.
Ricky Flores, good kid, a little bit rebellious. He has been in trouble. Mostly, I would say a lot of it, mostly the only juveniles can get in trouble with. Curfews, smoking, and maybe a little drinking. He has done a little bit of drugs. Some fighting with his mom, and by fighting, I don't mean punches. I mean verbally, and not wanting to listen to mom and stuff, like wanting to be his own man, stuff like that.
And he decided that, you know, enough was enough, and told my mom that he wanted counseling and he wanted to just do some programs to help him through it. I mean, he's a young kid, he doesn't know what's going on, and he's just trying to have fun.
How would Officer Rodriguez sum up the character of Ricky Flores around that time?
Ricky does have a good heart. He does care about his mom, does care about his brothers and family and stuff like that. He just likes to do his own thing and doesn't want people to tell him, but he is in the process of changing his life, changing his, he just has a new kid. Now he knows he has to be responsible and change his ways. It's not just about him anymore.
What had changed Ricky for the better was fatherhood.
He wanted to do good, and he wanted to take care of his newborn baby.
Ricky, Hispanic, had a white girlfriend called Jessica Johnson, now the mother of his child. They all knew Ricky was behaving himself, so why would he suddenly disappear?
I was called by dispatch and asking me to meet Maura Flores. She had reported him missing for, it had been a week now, and still had not heard back from anybody, and still had not heard from Ricky.
Ricky, she said, never left without his phone charger and always checked in, even on bender days when he'd get high. But not this time.
So it didn't make sense that he was gone and he wasn't coming home. So that was the first clue that something wasn't right. Well, I knew it wasn't good. He didn't hang out with the best crowd of people.
People like Willie Inman.
Willie Inman was just another person that hung around my house. He was friends with my brother. My mom fed him, she gave him food, she gave him clothes if he needed them.
Willie referred to Maura as mom. So, hey mom, I'm taking Ricky out to the ranch. We're gonna shoot or something, go shooting or something like that. And Ricky said, hey mom, I'll be back in a little while. Going with Ricky, and said, yeah, no problem, son. And saw them jump in the Jeep and take off.
And she waved goodbye to Ricky with Inman by his side. They went to Willie's ranch, met up with his girlfriend, Stormy Williams.
She said that was the last time she saw Ricky and heard from Ricky.
Willie Inman picked up Ricky Flores, and they were friends. And he took them out to his property out east of St. John's.
Officer Rodriguez brought Willie into St. John's police station for questioning. "Where is Ricky?" he asked.
Willie told me that indeed Ricky was at the ranch with him, and that they had gone, he talked to him about drugs and to stay away from drugs and stuff like that.
It was to be a recurring theme in the interrogation of Willie Inman. He was a good guy, helping out a teenage kid with good advice during target practice. Willie had no idea where Ricky was. But detectives didn't believe him. And Ricky's brother Nick was not hopeful either.
He liked to party and he liked to get in trouble. He hung out with older people. So I figured it wasn't anything too good why he was missing.
Detectives in St. John's did not believe Willie Inman's story and suspected him in a murder of Ricky Flores. Now, could they get him to admit it?
If there was an accident, something went wrong, if self-defense, whatever the reason was, I'm going to give you one chance, one time, sitting here in front of the chief, to tell me why it happened.
Over the days and weeks following the disappearance of Ricky Flores, Officer Lucas Rodriguez was to meet with Willie Inman often. He'd ask the same question.
I mean, Willie, come on, tell me where Ricky is. As the interview progressed, I can see a lot of deception signs on Willie. His carotid artery, I've never seen, but his carotid artery was literally bouncing. He started sweating, he started getting hot. He didn't fidgeting, he actually took his shirt off saying it was too hot in there. I was in uniform and it was not hot. I had a vest on and I was comfortable. I just could not get him to tell me what had happened to Ricky. I asked him, I remember asking him if I was gonna find Ricky alive. And Willie said he hoped so.
It was soon after one such interview that Inman left St. John's police station. He headed over to Springerville to meet up with his girlfriend, Stormy, 18 years older, with educational difficulties. Detective Rodriguez wasn't giving up easily and called on the couple there, along with a colleague, Deputy Morales. Still no answers.
We thank Willie and Stormy for talking to us, told them we'll get back in touch with us because we were looking for Ricky. And they said, yeah, no problem. Deputy Morales and I left, and on our way back into town, me and him were talking. We both had the same feeling that Ricky was hurt or that he was dead.
As for Willie, he'd grown tired of Lucas Rodriguez and the St. John's Police Department. He headed to the Chief of Police, Steve West, over at Springerville. "Help me out, Chief. Get these guys off my back."
What St. John's PD is asking you is they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky.
Correct.
And what's Ricky's last name?
Flores.
Flores. Okay, so they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky Flores. They're saying what? That you were the last one to see him?
Correct.
Right.
And that I know something, and they keep pressuring me like I do know something, which if I didn't, I would tell them because I want them off my back. So I'm tired of being harassed. They have no right coming to my girl's house, no right whatsoever. And last time they came here without a sheriff escort. They came in their St. John's police car out of jurisdiction. And they've broken the law. They searched her next door neighbor's house, and which...
This is Stormy's next door neighbor's house?
Yeah, correct. Which they had no right being in his yard.
Willie Inman had made a big mistake. He believed one of the police forces in Apache County would not support another in a missing person inquiry which was increasingly feeling like a murder investigation.
Normally it's for a chief of police not to get involved in a case is kind of rare, but since he had already struck a rapport with Willie, we allowed Steve to continue talking to Willie.
Still, no one knew where Ricky Flores was. But if he had been murdered by Inman, investigators needed to find a body, establish motive and method. That last part would prove straightforward. Inman was a trained gunman whose best friends were the guns that he fired out on his ranch.
when you were in the military, were you ever dispatched overseas?
Yes, sir.
Oh, is that right? Where did you fight?
Iraq.
Oh, did you?
Yes, sir.
Where was the first place you were deployed over there?
First place was Fallujah.
Uh-huh.
And then from there we moved downwards, and then it was the sniper alley I mainly was on, which was a 6-mile stretch between the Green Zone and Baghdad Airport.
Steve West was employing a softly approach and was getting results. Inman had almost certainly revealed how he had killed Ricky Flores, by shooting him. But if he had, what was his motive?
It was really strange because Mr. Inman, he had this affinity, number one, as far as being calm, to why he was there. He didn't seem upset about that at all. But the other thing was he had this affinity to talk about Nazism. And the way he did that is he did the Nazism, and the way it come out was on his baseball cap, he had some Nazi insignias, some little medals on there.
Inman, who cherished his German heritage, claimed that his grandfather was a crack Luftwaffe pilot who'd fought a just war.
The final solution. And seriously, I totally understand going after the Jews for bankrupting our country and trying to steal the world and everything they do and believe in, and we needed our money back.
And as Chief West sweet-talked Willie, Officer Rodriguez was listening to a different story. He'd asked Willie's girlfriend Stormy to call by Springerville police station. Her arrival was the turning point in the investigation. She'd been with Willie when he had returned to his ranch with Ricky.
It was decided to tell Stormy that Willie had confessed to the homicide. Stormy actually started talking and said yes, they had killed Ricky, and went into detail on how they had killed him and how they had taken him back to town and how they had buried him.
Until the moment that Inman entered Springerfield Station, he had revealed no mistakes in the murder of Ricky Flores. Now he was regretting ever asking Chief West for protection from those St. John's cops who'd stepped out of line. It had resulted in his girlfriend giving them both away. What had happened down on the ranch?
Just tell us what happened, Willie. That's the biggest thing. Run us through it.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, stuff happens. We know that.
Yes, and I'm telling you, I did not want to kill the kid. It was not murder, I can tell you that much.
Okay.
Oh God, I can't believe this.
Just tell us
Well,
what
that's
was
okay.
it.
Yeah, just tell us the story.
Inman claimed that he and Ricky had got into an argument whilst at target practice on Inman's ranch. But Ricky had fired first.
This ended up as self-defense. Something happened.
We finally got him to admit that he indeed did shoot this kid. Now, the way he said he shot him was this. He said they were both out at the site east of St. John's, and that they were out there and they were target practicing. And they started shooting cans and whatnot, and Ricky wanted to shoot the rifle, and so he let him shoot the rifle, and Mr. Inman said that he was standing by his car and a bullet hit the window next to him. He said that he took that as an aggressive move, and he got his rifle and started firing at Ricky.
He shot at me, I shot back.
Willie did disclose that the homicide had actually occurred at his ranch. I believe he shot him in the head.
I had a single gauge shotgun, and he had my M14, and he took a shot at me, and I shot him.
As the real-life drama unfolded, it seemed the case was closed.
Of course, by then he was in tears. You know, he was acting semi-remorseful. And the way that we got that interview out of him was basically saying, hey, you know, people do bad things, you know, please, you know, we know that, you know, if you've done something bad, the worst thing in the world is for you to have to carry it the rest of your life. You know, you need to come clean on that so that your conscience will be clear. And we went on and on and on, and finally that's when he admitted that.
God, I can't believe this. I'm gonna go away from murder. I just fucking do it.
Willie, you need to settle down. We need to get all the facts so that we can determine what's happened here. Okay? We need you to stay together for us. We're not your enemies.
Please, I need some tobacco, please. My God, I can't believe this.
At first, Willie stuck to his self-defense story, but was he telling the truth? Was this really a case of self-defense? Ricky's girlfriend, Jessica Johnson, had a father who did not like Hispanic boys. Like Ricky Flores.
I believe at one point Mr. Johnson and Melissa Johnson, the mom of Jessica Johnson, got a restraining order against Ricky and not allowed him to come around and be around Jessica. Well, it didn't matter because Jessica loved Ricky and she would sneak out of the house as well and go meet with him and vice versa. And Jessica had just recently given birth to a child, which belonged to Ricky.
It was even rumored that Jeff Johnson, Jessica's dad, was connected to a white supremacist group, one that Willie was all too afraid of.
I'm dead either way. As he goes down, there's too many out there. They are too smart. They will find me. They will kill me.
What other damaging evidence which might implicate others would emerge from the interview room? Was Willie Inman a hired gun working for a racist? Throughout Texas and Arizona, a neo-Nazi group called the Aryan Brotherhood has been carrying out drugs and gun-running crimes for decades. Exclusively white, its so-called captains exert a violent influence over its members. Fraternization with non-whites is forbidden. Detectives throughout the Apache County area suspected Jeffrey Johnson, father of Ricky Flores' girlfriend, of involvement with the Brotherhood. Police now had a theory which would blow Inman's self-defense claims out of the water.
It would not look good to Mr. Johnson that, since he's a white supremacist, that his daughter had a kid from a Hispanic kid. And did not want, he wanted Ricky gone and had offered to pay money for that.
Had Jeffrey Johnson ordered a hit on the boyfriend of his daughter? Another detective entered the room.
I understand the white supremacist swastikas. I know every tattoo on the guy's body. I know all about this guy right now. I've known about him for a long time. Quit taking care of him and take care of yourself. He knew you were going to murder him, and he was supposed to pay you. I know that. Tell me the truth, please.
Willie was not about to give evidence against Jeff Johnson in a murder crime.
Listen, he wanted me to beat his ass. Yes, he didn't want no death, no killing. And I thought about it, but no.
These were the facts established. After the murder of Ricky, Inman and Stormy Williams drove at speed from his ranch into St. John's and headed straight for Jeffrey Johnson's house.
He drove his body through the town of St. John's to Jeffrey Johnson's house.
The whole reason for Willie bringing the body over into town in the beginning, of just instead of just going through the back roads and going away from town, was that he came over and showed proof to Mr. Johnson that he had actually taken care of the job and killed Ricky.
My niece was probably sitting there, you know, just a couple months old, and, you know, her dad's body is in the back of a Suzuki Samurai, and her biological grandfather is going out there to look at it.
Why did you take the body to Jeff's house?
Because I was scared. I wanted to know.
Tell me exactly what you told Jeff when you got to his house.
I told Jeff, dude, he's in my car. You want to come look? Dude, I need some help. What the hell am I going to do? His words were exactly, get the f*** out of here and I don't want to see you again. That was his words.
William said that Mr. Johnson gave him got mad at him for bringing the body, and that got $20 from him for gas, and that was all, and he took off.
Had Jeffrey Johnson made a flippant, angry comment about wishing Ricky dead, and Willie taken it at face value, Inman left, drove up to the Elk Ranch, found a deserted spot, dug a shallow grave, and set Ricky's body alight. Storm E. Williams told detectives enough for them to find it.
Well, his body was burned so bad and his head was blown off with a 12-gauge shotgun. So there wasn't too much to be looking at. So they had to identify him by a homemade tattoo he had on his ankle, and he also broken his arm pretty severely and got some pins and plates in it. So that's how they identified his body, because there wasn't too much to say that this person was who he was.
Inman repeatedly refused to say that the murder was anything to do with Jeff Johnson.
Why are you so afraid of Jeff? What do you know about him that scares you so bad, Willie?
I know the Aryan Brotherhood. There's too many out there. He gets one message through to anybody. I will be dead. That's guaranteed. I know how they roll. He goes down, I will go down.
So you're covering, you don't have to admit to it, but you are covering his ass because you're afraid of death. Tell me that much.
I'm afraid of death, period.
Willie did not testify in court that he had acted on the instructions of anyone. Jeff Johnson and his wife Melissa would stand trial for hindering the prosecution in the case of the murder of Ricky Flores.
I think his charges were correct because he had knowledge and he did nothing to try to slow that down. But also I think that by sheer virtue of it taking place, I think that was a shock to him also.
Jeff Johnson was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Melissa Johnson was given probation. As for Willie's girlfriend, Storm E. Williams, she had been with Willie when he killed Ricky, had helped him move the body. But the mental well-being issues that she faced meant that she would never be charged.
Wasn't a person who could think on her own. That she would make a decision to do something, and if she felt like it, made Willie happy, or Willie wanted her to do it, she'd do it. She wasn't a crazy person. She was just really gullible and would do anything to make William Inman happy.
So that appeared to be the full story of what had happened out on Inman's ranch and later in St. John's and Elk Ranch. A teenager shot, his body paraded in front of his child's grandfather before being burned and partially buried. Willie even drew for detectives where the partial burial took place. But that was far from the end of the William Inman murder story. Detectives were still unable to find the gun that he had used to kill Ricky.
He asked him about the gun, what happened to it. He had indicated that he had thrown it in the sewer pond over in St. John's.
Not having the murder weapon felt like a loose end. Perhaps it had been used in other crimes. In St. John's County, there had been a suspicious death 2 years earlier, and another person had gone missing that same year. The suspicious death was of William McGarriger, known as Stoney, a 72-year-old who'd been found dead in his trailer in 2007. Did Inman know anything?
There's another case we want to talk to you about. The clock is running. If you can help us on that murder.
I have no idea on that at all. I do not. Me.
Stoney was murdered, I know it was quite some time ago. How'd you hear about it?
First, I was laying down and I got a phone call. And my dad told me. That's how I first found out.
6 hours after Willie Inman had asked Chief West for help, he had confessed to killing Ricky Flores. Now he was a suspect in another murder. But how would detectives get the evidence for that crime if indeed he was guilty?
God, I can't believe this. I'm gonna go away from murder. I just fucking do it.
else had happened in the William Inman story. Stoney McGarrigle was a loner who lived out in the woods near St. John's. His ranch was right next door to Ricky's. Real estate salesman Louis Leroux helped buy the property for him.
Stoney, I met him when he first came up to St. John's. He was a character, and he didn't trust a whole lot of people. And if you betrayed his trust, then, oh, all hell broke loose. And if you made him mad, he'd get in your face, he'd go nose to nose with you, and he'd scream at you, and make, oh gosh, he was dramatic, but he was a character. And he was a caring type of character once you were in his inner circle.
Unpopular with many, Stoney McGarrigle had faced some difficult times. He'd lost his wife and a young son in a tragic accident. As a result, he was depressed and an alcoholic by 2007. He mentioned suicide to his friend Louis on numerous occasions, said he was drinking himself to death.
He would not touch a $50 bill, because when he lost his wife and his two sons many years earlier, he had been hoarding money, and all he had was $50 bills. And so that freaked him out. He wouldn't accept it for payment. He wouldn't carry it.
Stoney, mistrusting of the bank, hoarded money in his home. People, including William Inman, knew all about that. One day in 2007, Louis Leroux was to be plunged into a drama all of his own.
I had been out of town during that day. I'd been up in Pine Top, and a couple of people had contacted me and say, hey, we've been needing to get a hold of Stoney. He's not responding. He's not getting back with us. We're concerned about him.
Louis headed out to the ranch.
So I went in there and I found him. He was laying on his right side like he always slept, with his arm up above the blanket. And then when I got over to him, he was kind of gray color and cold and stiff. Realized he was dead. Not expecting anybody to be murdered. Nobody had been murdered in St. John's in decades and decades.
The real estate salesman was in for a shock.
Stoney McGarrigle was shot in his bed while he was sleeping.
He had been murdered and been shot, and the homicide had gone unsolved since 2007.
Detectives knew Inman was a neighbor of McGarrigle. When still talking after the Flores revelations, one officer threw out a question.
Back to the Stoney deal. No, you don't know anything about that?
No, sir.
Help yourself out.
No, sir,
No knowledge of that murder at all.
A reward had been offered for information about the death of Stoney. Willie knew all about it. He would certainly have cooperated if he could.
If I did, I'd be collecting the money. Me and my brother did, and...
What'd you say, you and your brother?
Me and my brother were trying to figure out who did, because we wanted the money, because we were hurting bad at that time.
Right.
With a population of just 3,200, St. John's had 2 murders on its hands, and only 1 solved.
St. John's, you never expected anything like that. It's just a nice little community. When the phrase is St. John's is a town of friendly neighbors, and that's pretty well what it is. To have something like that happen is shocking.
Investigators had come up with nothing over the 2 years since the murder of Stoney McGarrigle, but for now they asked no more of Willie Inman. Soon, at a case review, Willie Inman's name came up in relation to an old motoring offence, and another mystery was born.
Willie had been stopped in a Camaro, a really nice Camaro. No plates, and the car had been impounded. But the car was, I believe the car was still impounded. Nobody had taken it out. That had been months prior to this, prior to Ricky being missing. And we started coming to a conclusion as to, okay, where's the owner for stuff like that.
One officer remembered the vehicle, gave a report.
I used to see this guy, and I think his name is Daniel. He used to drive it all the time, and I haven't seen him in a while.
Daniel Acton, a Vietnam War veteran and another whose ranch was adjacent to Willie Inman's.
I knew that he had not been around, and people were asking about him and things. I hadn't seen him, but Daniel was a real nice guy.
Who nobody had seen for a while. Police wanted answers to the mysteries out in Apache County.
Well, need to still get Stoney, and you still guys have a missing person, that the car is still an impound, and that needs to be solved, and we need to find out where the person is that they were driving the car. I told him, well, that's where you got to go, and that's kind of where this needs to be.
2 dead men, 1 confession, and a missing man, and they all had one thing in common. They lived on or next to the ranch of William Nicholas Inman. They'd got a confession once. What would it take for detectives to get the truth out of Willie Inman a second time? And was there actually a link between the 3 deaths?
I don't think it was connected. I don't think in the beginning the disappearance of Ricky and the disappearance of Daniel or the death of Stoney, the murder of Stoney, was related.
And if Willie Inman was in custody not suspected of the murder of Stoney, that left just one conclusion.
We have a killer loose in the community.
Was Daniel Acton a victim of murder? He was missing and his car was in a police pound, having last been driven by William Inman. Acton was not the grumpy old guy that the murdered Stoney McGarrigle was. Unlike him, Acton had no enemies.
I know Daniel as best as anybody did. Daniel was, I'm hard of hearing. Daniel was totally deaf. Once in a while he'd hear a word, but he read lips.
It wouldn't take long for Willie to confess, now that he'd started. Throughout the interview with Chief Steve West, Willie seemed eager to please. He was a good guy. He'd wanted to help Ricky, the kid just wouldn't listen. That was Willie's story. Corporal Inman was a former army man. He could be trusted.
He did give up his rights to an attorney in order for us to talk to him the second time. And it was almost like something you'd see in prison, in the fact that he was willing to give up information for stuff on the second interview. If we got him cigarettes, he would talk to us. If we got him a hamburger, he would talk to us. So during that discussion, it was like, well, yeah, lunchtime's coming up, we'll get you a hamburger, we'll talk to you about it, yada, 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 and he did.
Willie had admitted that he had murdered Ricky Flores. He'd had good reason. The kid was fooling around with drugs. During the second interrogation, Inman decided to trade. He'd agreed to the interview in exchange for a hamburger. Now he was going to up the stakes. He traded the truth for his life. If the police did not seek the death penalty, he would tell all. A deal was struck. Willie would not face execution in exchange for a full confession. He admitted finally that he had killed Stoney McGarrigle. After shooting Stoney 12 times through his window, Willie ransacked the house, stole some of the money that McGarrigle kept hidden. But there was something else that Willie claimed. Stoney had inappropriately touched Inman once. He was probably a child molester.
And he actually said that they deserved to die.
And he took officers out into the deepest part of the Elk Ranch to show where he had buried the body of Danny Acton. His crime? The deaf man couldn't hear what Willie could each evening.
Yeah, Daniel, the main reason that he wanted to do something about that was because of his barking dog. Yeah, he couldn't get the barking dog shut up.
Willie ended up taking us. I remember going with Willie. He agreed that it was okay for me to go and follow him as he took us to the ranch where he had killed Ricky. He took us to the place where Daniel Ekman had been killed, and then he took us to where Stoney had been killed and how he killed Stoney.
Inman, the former military man, the gun nut, had been seeking police protection, but it ended up bringing a naive accomplice in front of persuasive police detectives, and then admitted 3 murders. Murders that he felt he was justified in committing.
He wanted to rid the world of people who he felt shouldn't be in this world. So he had a grievance against those men, so he took it upon himself to be the one to get rid of them, to make the world better.
Indeed, he styled himself as a vigilante.
He was branded a serial killer, a vigilante killer, the youngest serial killer in the country.
He did this with malice. He knew where he was going, he knew what he was doing, he knew how he was going to do it. He planned it, staged it, and completed it. So if that isn't vigilantism, nothing is. And he's doing it for a cause that he thinks is right. Whether it was barking dogs, whether it was because they're a dope slinger, or whether they were a child molester or whatever. He always had this reason in the back of his mind for doing that.
Once he started talking, Willie Inman couldn't stop. He'd wanted to avoid detection as a killer, but made the mistake of surrendering himself in the belief that he was too clever to be caught out.
Willie, when he talks to you, when you talk to him, he can be looking at you, but you can feel like he's looking into your soul, kind of like a scary type of demeanor that Willie has. He never showed remorse, never. I think he would just do it again. He was nonchalant about the whole thing and how he went around and almost with a smile on how he killed him and what he did and how he covered his tracks and stuff like that. It's like in any other day, it's just like you tell me how your day was and how it was at work.
There has been controversy about Inman's sentence. Some expected the death sentence, others life without parole. In the event, he was given 24 years for all 3 murders, to be served without parole.
He's suffering in prison, and he's living with what he did all the rest of his days that he's there. I think what's going to be the most interesting is what happens when he gets out. So what happens then? And that would be the story to cover, to find out, 1, has he changed? Is he the same man? Of course, he was 21, so is he different? Is he going to do the same thing? Is he going to come back up into this community and live? I think all of that would be very interesting.
Stoney McGarrigle and Daniel Acton did not deserve to be killed by William Inman, but at least they'd lived a full life. Ricky Flores was a minor, a child in the eyes of the law whose life was taken by a man who considered himself to have just cause.
There's some messed up part in his head that, said, if I can kill these people and, people can't figure out about it, then I'm obviously doing something right. I'm taking bad people off the street. That's what he claimed his thought process was. But really, he was just a skinny, frail boy who lived out east of St. John's, Arizona, that everyone, just knew as the skinny, poor boy, that it's kind of hard to make your name for yourself when you start there. And he just wanted to show that he had some sort of power. He wasn't worthless. He could make these kind of bad things happen. He thought that he would be remembered as, a mastermind of some sort, but really he was just some dumbass that, wanted to take people's relatives away from them.
William Nicholas Inman will be released from prison in 2035.